And now for that equal values game, as promised. So for today's game, in your kit, you should have had a set of, in a baggie, of equal values cards. Yours will not be yellow. Mine are yellow because I made mine when I went to professional development and learned how to use this game in the classroom. You will have that set of cards. You will have an equal values recording sheet that looks like this. And you should also have the equals values directions. So I'm going to be following these to help you learn the game. So if it helps you to have the equal value game directions right there while I'm talking you through playing the game. And it's basically just a matching game with some different things that you can do at different times during the game, depending on, it gives you some freedom of choice. And it depends on your cards and how they're played, and when you're working with your partner and some agreements that you can make. One of the things I might suggest to you before you get started, some of these equations are very challenging. And if you're not strong in knowing your math facts mentally, which is no big deal at all, if that's not one of your strengths, then having a calculator handy is not a bad thing at all, because calculators can give you some experience in thinking. But remember, when you're using that calculator, to check the products, check and make sure the numbers that you are using in your calculator, make sure that you input the information correctly, because I always tell my students in the classroom that calculators are only as good as the person behind them. So you have to be sure that you're entering your numbers correctly, and then when you press the equal sign, ask yourself, does that product make sense? And I'm using the word product today because we are working in multiplication. So remember that answers to different problems will depend on, what calculation you're doing for that day, whether it be addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. So for our purposes today, it is going to be product because we are using multiplication. So to play the game, you take your stack of equal values cards, and you're going to give to your partner 4 cards that are going to be placed face up, and you take 4 cards that are placed up, and then you put the rest of the stack face down. Each of you will have an equal symbol. Okay, and remember, we talked about in the last video what equals means. It's equivalent. It means that it's balanced, that you're looking for balanced equations. And one of the things you're going to notice is that when you start matching cards up, you're not going to have the commutative property all the time. Sometimes you're going to have equations that are grouped by the associative. You can use the associative property to group some numbers together. You can use the distributive property to help you solve some of these equations. But most of all, you're thinking about the products, and you're developing some flexibility in thinking, because you're looking at how different numbers have, you can find balance between using different numbers and using different equations to find the same product. So that's our goal today. And you want to get more pairs than your partner. So our goal is to work toward getting pairs, and then to have the most pairs of products. So to get us started, what you want to do is take a look at your 4 cards, and if you see a set of cards that would be equivalent, that means that you could put the equal sign between them in your cards, you can go ahead and match those up. So when I look down at my cards, I notice that I have 3 times 8. And when I look at this card, I think I can match those up, because 3 multiplied by 8 is 24. And then if I look at this card, 4 times 3 is 12. And then I have another group of 4 times 3. So I'm using the associative property to group those cards together. So 4 times 3 is 12, and 4 times 3 is 12. And then if I add 12 plus 12, that equals 24. So these are equivalent. So I've made a pair. I can say that 8 times 3 is equal to 4 times 3 plus 4 times 3, or 4 times 3 plus 4 times 3 is equal to 3 times 8. And I'm going to record that pair on my recording sheet. So card number 1 is 4 times 3. And then card number 2 is 4 times 3 plus 4 times 3. And then on your sheet it says, how do you know the cards make a pack? Well, how do you know that these cards make a pack? And it's simply what I just talked you through. I said, well, I can group 4 times 3, and that equals 12, and 4 times 3, and that equals 12, and 12 plus 12 equals 24. And I could use those strategies that I talked about in the last video. Oops, I had that upside down. I can talk about some of those strategies in the last video where you drew pictures, 3 groups of 8. I can skip count by 3s 8 times, and that equals 24. So there's lots of ways to prove that these are equivalent. So you can use any of those to help structure your thinking. Okay, so now Caroline's going to take a look at her group of cards, and she's going to look to see if she has any matches.
I do not have any matches.
Okay, she doesn't have any that matches. So I need to replace the 2 cards that I matched. So I'm going to draw 2 cards from the card deck that's down, and I'm going to replace the 2. Okay, now we're ready to start playing between each other. So this is another thing you can do. She can look at my group of 4 cards, and if she finds a match, she can take my match, or she can take the card that I have that she needs.
I have 6 times 10, and she has 6 times 2 times 5.
Okay, so how do you know that these are equivalent, Caroline?
2 times 5 is 10, so therefore 6 times 10 is equal to 6 times 10.
Nice, awesome. So she would record that on her recording sheet. And since she took one of my cards, I get to trade with her for one of her cards too. Okay, so I'm looking to see if I can trade any cards. And, oh, I can. I have 8 times 9. And she has 9 times 8. And I know these are equal because of the commutative property. So I get to make a pair. Okay. And I'll record that on my recording sheet. And now we have to replace the cards and she'll replace hers. Now, what if you come to a point where you don't have any cards that match? She doesn't have a card that I need, and I don't have a card she needs. You'll just continue drawing from your card pile that's face down, and you'll continue play until you run out of cards. Once you run out of cards, count your matches, and whoever has the most pairs wins the game. Have fun playing the equal values game.